The moment I stumbled upon the truth about my husband, my whole world began to crumble. It felt like I was living in some twisted version of a movie plot, one that I could never have imagined in my wildest dreams. My husband, the man I've leaned on through thick and thin, the rock of our family, had been living a double life for over 17 years. We've been married for more than 25 years, raising 3 wonderful children together, 2 of whom are now in college and 1 still at home. But behind the facade of our seemingly perfect life, he had managed to build another family, completely unbeknownst to me. My husband works as an insurance broker, traveling across the country to manage his various branches. Every other week, he'd leave home, claiming to be working late or attending meetings. Little did I know that during his time away, he was in Albuquerque, where his other branch is located, spending his time with another woman, a fiancée, and their 2 children, both of whom are now teenagers. The revelation hit me like a freight train when I decided to set up a new Facebook account. As I typed in my husband's first name, another profile popped up, a profile with a different last name. Intrigued, I clicked on it, and there it was, a glimpse into his secret life, complete with links to the social media pages of his fiancée and their kids. My heart dropped as I scrolled through photos of my husband, looking every bit the doting father, laughing and sharing meals with a family that wasn't ours. There he was, kissing the woman with a ring on her finger, his arms wrapped around kids who bore a striking resemblance to him. In that moment, I felt utterly shattered. I was torn between 2 extremes. One part of me wanted to confront him, to scream and shout and let him know just how much he had ruined my life, while another part wanted to cling to ignorance, to preserve the peace we had for the sake of our children. He had been a good father, a reliable provider, and a loving husband. But all of that had been a lie, shared with another family. The thought of tearing apart our family felt unbearable, not just for me but for them as well. As I sat alone in our home, I couldn't help but feel the weight of despair. My youngest son was away on a graduation trip with friends, leaving me alone to grapple with this betrayal. I kept replaying the scenarios in my head, hoping for a miracle, wishing he would come home and tell me it was all just a misunderstanding. Yet deep down, I knew better. I couldn't stay in the house where we had built our life together, where we had celebrated countless holidays and created memories. The thought of writing him a note to express my pain and anger lingered in my mind, but I soon realized that hurting him wouldn't ease my own suffering. I didn't know how I would face him again after this revelation, how I could look into his eyes without feeling the weight of betrayal. Update: 4 days later. It's been 4 days since my world was turned upside down, and I want to thank everyone for their supportive words. I've never felt more lost in my life, but your advice has been a beacon of hope. I reached out to a lawyer, who has guided me through the steps I need to take. We're gathering evidence, photos of social media pages, text messages, flight records, anything that could help me in the legal proceedings to come. I'm slowly putting everything together in a folder, ready to present it to a judge when the time comes. In an unexpected turn, I managed to contact the other woman. I explained my situation, and to my surprise, she was just as devastated. She is financially independent and assured me they didn't share any property, which makes things a bit cleaner on her end. My husband is currently aware that I know the truth and has checked into a hotel, but he has no idea that I've spoken to her. When he came home that evening, I confronted him. The sight of his tears, his pleas for forgiveness, made me feel a mix of anger and pity. I couldn't help but view him as a coward for what he had done, and I was furious at how pathetic his excuses sounded. While I grieved for what we had lost, I couldn't shake the feeling that if he was capable of staying away for my sake, then being faithful for my sake should have been considered, too. He's been staying in a downtown hotel, calling to check in occasionally. I've noticed that my sadness has been replaced with rage. I'm not just hurt, I'm furious. The kids have no idea what's going on. My youngest thinks his dad is simply busy with work in Albuquerque due to some business issues. I'm at a loss about how to explain to them that they have siblings they never knew about, that their father has been leading a life with another family. Despite my feelings of unworthiness, Your kind words have been a tremendous help. Thank you all for your support. Update, 6 months later. As I sit down to share this update, I want to express my gratitude to everyone who offered me encouragement during this tumultuous time. The support I've received has been overwhelming, and it truly made a difference as I navigated through this painful experience. I won't delve into the details of the divorce since it's still ongoing, but rest assured, it's happening. Initially, I had moments of doubt about whether to stay or leave, but I am firm in my decision to move on. We have completely cut off direct contact. Communication between my husband and me is now solely through our lawyers. He has officially moved out of the house, and my middle child has returned home to help support me through this transition. From what I understand, my kids have also limited their contact with him, though I haven't pressed them about it. It's not my place to intervene. Custody isn't an issue since my youngest has recently turned 18. Surprisingly, we've been in touch with the other family. In a rather unusual turn of events, we even spent Christmas together. At first, it felt awkward, but we're doing our best to unite the kids and create a sense of family among them. I'm still processing everything, but I have a glimmer of hope. Despite the heartbreak, I'm slowly learning to rebuild my life, step by step. Thank you all for being with me on this journey. As I sit here, preparing to log off Reddit for good, I can't help but reflect on the whirlwind of emotions that led me here. I'm thankful for all the support and love I've received from everyone. It's been a journey, one that's forced me to confront a reality I never thought I'd face. I'll be stepping away from this platform to focus on my kids and their lives, and for that, I'm grateful. But speaking of journeys, let's dive into a story that's as wild as they come. Imagine this, a man, let's call him the master of deceit, living a double life for a staggering 17 years. You heard that right, 17 years. Can you believe it? I mean, if secret agents could take a few notes from this guy, they'd be set for life. But here's the kicker, he's not just living 2 lives, he's deceived everyone around him. This guy has been a partner, a father, a friend, all while having another family on the side. Talk about a plot twist. What I really wish we could have learned is how this whole mess began. I mean, the origin story of such an elaborate ruse must be something straight out of a movie. We're talking about a master level of infidelity here, where he crafted 2 worlds with 2 different families. In the end, though, it's a relief to see the other family move on. The ex-wife got a divorce, and now it seems like they're trying to come together in a way that's, well, harmonious. Good for them, I guess. But enough about that, let's shift gears to my next story, which hits a little closer to home. Picture this, my wife, Eliza, a vibrant 32-year-old woman, is at our wedding, a day meant for celebration, when my best friend, Ally, who's 31, accidentally spills wine all over her. Now, Eliza is demanding that I, a 33-year-old man, cut ties with Ally altogether. Talk about drama. Let me take you back to how this all began. I first met Ally in 2012 during a pub quiz at university. I was instantly drawn to her and, in a moment of boldness, told her so at the end of the night. She was flattered but reminded me she had a boyfriend, which didn't faze me at all. Fast forward 3 years, and I found myself at the Edinburgh Fringe, where I met Eliza. The connection was electric. We bonded over everything, politics, music, cinema. Every conversation was a spark igniting a fire I had never felt with anyone else. She had this infectious enthusiasm that made everything seem brighter. Before long, Eliza and I were inseparable. I knew we were destined for each other long before I proposed. But just when I thought I had left Ally behind, life threw a curveball my way. I started a new job at an advertising firm, and guess who else was there? Yep, Ally. At first, the atmosphere was awkward, given our history. After all, she was married to the boyfriend she had back in university, and I was now committed to Eliza. But since I didn't know anyone else, I thought, why not be friends? It turned out to be a wise choice because our friendship blossomed into something fun. Ally had a cheeky personality, and I'm more of a dry, sarcastic guy, so we had our own unique dynamic. However, I soon noticed Eliza felt left out at times. Whenever the three of us hung out, she'd sometimes get upset if she thought Ally was making fun of her. I brushed it off, thinking it was just the nature of our friendship, but there were moments when Eliza was visibly hurt. Like the time Ally casually sat in Eliza's seat to show me a YouTube video. When Eliza returned, she was crushed to find Ally leaning in close to me, and her mood soured for the rest of the night. Things escalated one night when I joked about missing swimming due to feeling out of shape. Ally playfully suggested we go together, and I could see Eliza tense up. She didn't say anything, but the discomfort was palpable. Then came our wedding day, a day that should have been filled with joy. During the reception, the stress got to Eliza. Ally bumped into her, and a glass of red wine spilled all over Eliza's beautiful dress. It was a disaster. Eliza was in tears, and the atmosphere shifted from celebration to something more somber. Now, as we're on our honeymoon, Eliza is expressing her desire for a fresh start, but can't shake the feeling that Ally spilled that wine on purpose. She's suggesting that I cut ties with her, and honestly, I'm torn. Where do I go from here? Some comments on Reddit have struck me as I've pondered this situation. One user pointed out how unlikely it is to accidentally spill a drink on someone, especially at their wedding. They suggested that my wife might not stay my wife for much longer unless I start taking her concerns seriously. When I talked to Ally about the incident, she was mortified. She explained that she tripped and fell, and she genuinely didn't mean to spill the wine. I know Ally, she's clumsy and has had her fair share of embarrassing moments. I remember a meeting at work where she spilled coffee everywhere just walking in. But as I try to navigate this situation, I find myself caught between my best friend and my wife. I know I need to listen to Eliza and validate her feelings, but I can't just sever ties with someone I've known for so long. The complexities of relationships can be so challenging, especially when emotions run high. So, here I am, trying to figure out the best way to support my wife while also considering the long-standing friendship I have with Ally. It's a balancing act, and I can only hope to find a resolution that keeps both women in my life without sacrificing my relationship with either of them. In a world where social interactions can sometimes feel like navigating a minefield, Alex often found himself in awkward situations. His best friend, Ally, had a knack for saying the wrong thing at the wrong time, leaving him scrambling to mend the emotional wreckage that often followed. This was particularly true during a recent wedding that should have been the happiest day for his wife, Eliza. Instead, it became a source of tension and hurt. Alex had always appreciated Ally's sense of humor, but lately, her glib remarks about personal matters had begun to wear thin. There had been several instances where her offhand comments seemed to cut deeper than intended. It left Alex questioning whether her actions were truly accidental or if there was something more sinister at play. When someone remarked, "So, you have a friend who can manage to upset your wife to the point of tears, and you're still inviting her to the wedding? Doesn't that strike you as suspicious?" Alex felt the weight of those words. If he had known for certain that Ally's behavior was deliberate, it would have shattered him. He loved Eliza and wanted their marriage to be a sanctuary, a place free from conflict. But Ally's meddling was becoming a threat to that peace. After a long moment of contemplation, Alex recognized he needed to reassess his friendship with Ally. If her actions were a calculated attempt to stir the pot and harm his marriage, he would have to draw the line and distance himself. Eliza often claimed she could sense people's feelings just minutes after meeting them. Alex, on the other hand, struggled with picking up on such cues. He recalled a childhood memory of being at his aunt's house, chattering away while she repeatedly hinted at wanting him to leave. It wasn't until his mother intervened that he realized he was overstaying his welcome. User 4 chimed in, bluntly stating, "It really seems like you're putting your friend first. No wonder your wife is unhappy." That struck a chord with Alex. Just the other day, Eliza had returned home from an outing with Ally in tears. Instead of taking her feelings seriously, He had invited Ally to the wedding, dismissing Eliza's hurt. Reflecting on their interactions, Alex remembered a particularly painful moment when Ally, in one of their typical banters, had roasted Eliza a little too harshly. Leapfrog, Ally had called her after Eliza had mentioned her webbed feet. Alex often joked around with Eliza, and she usually took his playful teasing in stride. But when Ally did it, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. Eliza felt belittled, and Alex couldn't understand why his friend's comments landed differently than his own. It didn't help that Eliza pointed out that Ally's intentions seemed insincere, unlike his playful jabs. "I don't get it," Alex mused, recalling the incident. "Ally calls her Leapfrog and it's a massive problem, but when I call her that, it's all in good fun. It feels like I'm losing my mind over this." User 5 added, "Why haven't you stood up for your wife? Ally has hurt her too many times." Alex found himself reflecting on that question. Had he been so oblivious to Eliza's feelings? The truth was, he had never fully grasped how deeply Eliza felt about Ally's remarks. Eliza was a passionate person who could easily get emotional, often crying during heartwarming commercials or movies. While Alex appreciated her sensitivity, he realized it sometimes complicated their friendships. The disparity between Ally's sarcastic humor and Eliza's emotional nature was becoming glaringly apparent. Alex now recognized how Ally's seemingly harmless jokes could be interpreted as intentional cruelty, and he felt a wave of guilt wash over him. He thought of his previous posts seeking advice on how to support Eliza through her anxiety surrounding Ally, and he had been met with a chorus of voices telling him he had been inconsiderate. Determined to make things right, Alex sat down with Eliza to have a candid conversation about the wedding incident. He asked her to recount the events as she experienced them. "I was leaving the lobby to head into the dining area," she explained, her voice steady yet filled with emotion. "Ally had been drinking and seemed a bit unsteady. When I stepped out, we collided, and she made some joke about me looking like Rosamund Pike from Gone Girl. It felt like she was laughing at me, not with me." Eliza recounted how Ally had scurried away, her expression one of embarrassment but without an apology. It struck Alex that Ally had expressed regret to others, but not directly to Eliza. It painted a picture of a friend who unintentionally but habitually inflicted microaggressions, leaving Eliza feeling anxious in her presence. "It's like I can predict when I'm near her that something awkward is going to happen," Eliza confessed, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "I don't want to be in a situation where my husband brings someone into our home who clearly resents me for just being myself." Hearing those words hit Alex like a punch to the gut. He had always thought of Ally as just a fun-loving friend, but now he understood the deeper insecurities that plagued Eliza. Their honeymoon had been overshadowed by the memory of that wedding incident, and it pained him to see how deeply it affected her. Realizing he had been a jerk, Alex apologized profusely to Eliza. He felt a sense of urgency to confront Ally about her behavior. So, he picked up the phone and dialed Ally's number, steeling himself for the conversation. When he reached her, he said, "Ally, we need to talk about what happened at the wedding." Eliza was really hurt by the incident with her dress. "This isn't just a one-off thing, it's been an ongoing issue. If you can't find it in yourself to apologize to her directly, at the very least, you should contribute to getting the stain out." The conversation quickly unraveled, filled with tension as Ally's defensiveness clashed with Alex's frustration. He realized that this was no longer just about a stained dress or a few careless comments. It was about loyalty, love, and the strength of the bonds they held dear. As he hung up, Alex felt the weight of the moment settle heavily on his shoulders. He understood that navigating friendships, love, and the delicate balance of emotions would always be challenging, but he was determined to protect what mattered most, his marriage. In that moment, he promised himself that he would always put Eliza first, ensuring that their home remained a safe space for both of them, free from the shadows of misunderstandings and hurtful words. "Ally and I had been through a lot, but it was becoming increasingly clear that our friendship was hanging by a thread. The moment I realized she couldn't even consider making amends was the moment I understood, it was over." Saying that Ally was taking a step back would be an understatement, she was completely blindsided. When I tried to talk to her about the strain between us, she launched into a torrent of questions, demanding to know what was wrong with our interactions. Why did we have to reach such extremes? I brought up the comment she had made about Leah being a frog, and she shot back that I was calling her out for that, too. Then she mentioned how Eliza had referred to her as Garfield because of her weight and bright orange hair. It seemed like a childish argument, but when I reminded her about the incident where she had rushed toward Eliza and spilled wine all over her without even a hint of an apology, things got heated. Ally was furious, insisting she hadn't run at Eliza to ruin her dress but was simply trying to escape a conversation she felt too vulnerable to have. She claimed Eliza hated her, and that feeling was too overwhelming for her to deal with. She started pointing out all the times Eliza had made snide remarks towards her. I tried to steer the conversation back to the issue at hand, stressing that this wasn't about how Eliza had hurt her, it was about how she had hurt Eliza. The situation escalated, and Ally's nervous laughter made me uneasy. I knew that laughter was her way of coping with anxiety. From the other room, Eliza asked if everything was all right. That's when Ally accused me of setting her up, which completely blindsided me. When I tried to explain, she hung up on me. Soon after, Ally's husband, Yuan, called, offering to pay for the damages if it would relieve some stress from my end. I appreciated the gesture but told him I needed clarity on where Ally stood regarding our earlier conversation. Yuan assured me that Ally had a history of making jokes whenever she felt anxious or uncomfortable. He acknowledged that they had talked about it before, but the incident with the wine-soaked wedding dress was a significant problem that he wanted to address just as much as I did. To ease the tension, Yuan and Ally decided to cover the cost of the dry cleaning and send a condolences hamper to Eliza. Eliza was grateful for Yuan's understanding, but she wasn't thrilled about Ally's reaction to the entire debacle. She pointed out that the Garfield comment had always been about Ally's hair, not her weight, and that Ally was deliberately trying to twist the narrative to make it seem like both parties were at fault. I couldn't agree with her there. I had never seen Eliza roast Ally in any meaningful way. Eliza suggested we might need marriage counseling, which took me by surprise. We had only been married for a month. But I knew if Eliza thought it was necessary, it had to be serious. So, we decided to explore that option. My future with Ally, on the other hand, was looking uncertain. Update number 2. After the much-needed reality check I received from my last post, I'm relieved to say that Ally and I aren't communicating anymore. It's probably for the best. Eliza and I received the condolences hamper in the mail, and it was, well, peculiar, to say the least. It was filled primarily with soap, not the luxurious, fragrant body lotions you'd expect, but rather just the kind of soap you might find in the motel bathroom. There were 2 dispensers that had a faint rose scent, but you really had to sniff to even notice. The rest were plain white soap bars that barely had any fragrance at all. It was baffling. The only items that seemed remotely like a gift were a 6-pound bottle of Chardonnay and a box of chocolate-covered roses, which appeared to have taken more effort than the rest of the contents. But the strangest item by far was a pair of women's underwear. Not cute lingerie or anything remotely tempting, just a plain pair of white panties. They were actually a bit grubby, with a faint orange lining. This whole thing made no sense to me. If they were meant for Eliza, they were at least 6 sizes too big. And if Ally was trying to send me a signal, why on earth would she choose such disgusting underwear? It creeped me out. I called Ally to ask her why I received soap and used knickers in a condolences hamper. Her responses were dripping with sarcasm, and she kept making dry remarks to her husband about the strange noise on my end of the line. Frustrated, I insisted Yuan should speak to me instead. After some reluctant back and forth, she finally handed the phone to him. Yuan was caught off guard when I described the hamper, saying it looked like something a janitor living under a bridge might carry. He explained that although it was a small package, there should have been some upscale items instead of just sanitary products. Apparently, a bottle of Chardonnay, a box of chocolates, a Lindt bar, some assorted crackers, and cheeses were supposed to be in there. Instead, we got what felt like leftovers from a warehouse. Yuan was mortified and apologetic, promising to cover the cost of the missing items. At that point, I was furious, but I took a deep breath and asked to talk to Ally again. When I got her on the line, I told her she had one last chance to make things right, and she blew it. She groaned, claiming that Eliza's jealousy had crippled our friendship, and she was tired of having to coddle Eliza's insecurities. I shot back, "No, you are the one with the insecurities." I knew this was only the beginning of a much bigger problem, and it felt like everything was spiraling out of control. As we rode along, the tension in the air was palpable. I finally spoke up, admitting that this situation had been brewing for quite some time and that Ally's attitude had been a source of distress for Eliza over the years. Ally shot back, insisting that none of this would have happened if Eliza could just learn to take a joke. I couldn't help but retort that a joke shouldn't come at the cost of ruining someone's wedding dress and then sending her your husband's tacky comments. That didn't sit well with Ally. She accused me of selling out my principles for a girl who felt threatened by other women. After our phone call, Eliza wasn't so much hurt as she was confused. At first, she thought there had been some kind of mix-up until I took the time to explain the whole joke scenario. Eventually, she seemed to accept the harsh reality that Ally would always be a pain in the neck. I reassured her that it was highly unlikely Ally would change, especially since she had cut me off just for standing up for Eliza. In a strange way, I felt that our recent counseling had fortified our bond. I mean, if a friendship collapses the moment you try to defend your loved ones, then perhaps it wasn't as strong as we thought. I expressed my regret about losing a friend, but as I reflected, I realized that Ally's behavior had made the decision for me. Some comments from friends popped into my mind. User 1 remarked, "I just hope you finally realize how stupid this all is and apologize to your wife. How could you have not noticed that your friend was bullying her?" I had apologized to Eliza countless times, admitting that I should have been more assertive with Ally right from the start. I knew it was entirely my fault for allowing someone to bully my wife. Another user chimed in, saying they were glad I was finally seeing the light but questioned why I had been so permissive before. They asked if I enjoyed the attention or if it was just easier to dismiss Eliza's concerns as petty jealousy. The truth was, I had seen it as something that was lost in translation. What worked for Ally and me didn't translate to Eliza. I thought she'd eventually catch on to the type of banter we shared and join in. Eliza came from a very straightforward family, where they said what they meant and rarely joked around like I did. The humor I found so amusing would completely go over their heads, leaving them confused and upset, thinking they were actually insulting each other. I remembered a time when Eliza's brother nearly confronted me for saying, "That's plenty," while she was rambling on about something. I thought it was a funny reference from our favorite show, Still Game, but he took it as a personal insult, believing I was telling her to shut up. Eliza had looked so embarrassed, hiding her face in her hands as if I had committed some grave offense. Looking back, I realized I should have been more attuned to what was happening. Eliza had told me that whenever she tried to engage with Ally, she'd just brush her off with comments like, "I don't do small talk," leaving them sitting in awkward silence. On one occasion, Eliza tried to strike up a conversation, only for Ally to yawn so loudly that it startled our dog awake. I only found out about these instances recently because Eliza didn't want to burden me with her concerns. Now, I felt nothing but shame for my ignorance. It was clear that Ally had been finding all sorts of ways to bully Eliza and push her out of our dynamic. I had no idea why Ally thought any of her behavior was acceptable, but what mattered most was that my wife should never have felt scared to express her true feelings to me. And yes, I still worked with Ally, which complicated matters even further. But I wasn't too worried about her stirring up trouble at work. She valued her job too much for that. Still, I wouldn't be surprised if she threw some passive-aggressive remarks my way. I guess I'd just have to wait and see what would unfold. I had no interest in reconciling with her if that meant enduring any form of disrespect. I felt it was important to clarify that the reason Ally was out of my life was that I called her out in the first place. This was more about her actions than my passivity. I fully acknowledged that it was a problem, and yes, I should have addressed it long ago. But let's not start daydreaming about a future where I simply welcome her back with open arms after how she treated my wife. That was never going to happen because I want a future with Eliza far more than I want a buddy to grab lunch with. I've messed up, and I know it. But I'm committed to changing for the better. Then someone asked in the comments if the underwear they were talking about was mine. I quickly clarified that I stopped having feelings for Ally back in 2012 after she said she was taken. I never slept with her, and honestly, I didn't care for that kind of speculation. It was just false and only added more fuel to the fire. In a world where the complexities of interpersonal relationships can often spiral out of control, Eliza stumbled upon a video that struck a deep chord within her. The video, which surfaced on platforms like YouTube or TikTok, was a reaction to a post I had shared, and as she watched, a wave of painful emotions washed over her. It was particularly jarring for her to read the comments, overwhelmingly supportive of her position. They forced her to confront the reality of her situation. She had always been someone who preferred to handle her problems alone, so discovering that others recognized the severity of what she had endured was eye-opening. This prompted a heartfelt conversation between us, where she began to acknowledge just how terrible everything done to her had been. As our discussion deepened, I made a promise to Eliza that I would cut off all communication with Ally. It was clear that Ally thrived on chaos and sought to stir trouble for her amusement. In a bid to address the situation more formally, I brought it to the attention of our HR department. Even the most notorious gossip in the office, someone affectionately dubbed Stinky Underpants, was involved, and HR assured me they would keep an eye on things. Thankfully, up to this point, there hadn't been any further incidents. While Ally seemed to be preoccupied with lunching alongside another colleague, I chose to take my breaks at a nearby cafe, relishing baked potatoes while enjoying some peace away from the tension. Whenever I found myself in Ally's vicinity, she would mumble a curt "all right" in response to my presence, which I interpreted as a sign that HR had indeed addressed her behavior. Meanwhile, I was pleased to report that my wife was doing well, thanks in large part to the successful couples counseling sessions we had been attending. These sessions opened my eyes to my own behavior and the ways I had inadvertently allowed toxic dynamics to fester. I had always struggled with anxiety, especially when faced with emotionally charged situations, which made me avoid conflict at all costs. Reflecting on my childhood, I remembered how my relatives would tug at me like a rag doll during their disputes, pulling me into their arguments and forcing me to choose sides. This past trauma had conditioned me to shy away from conflict altogether, leading me to leave issues unresolved and causing unnecessary pain for those I loved. I came to realize that when someone mistreats a person I care about, my instinctive retreat only exacerbates the problem. A significant focus of our counseling sessions has been on accountability, learning that it's not enough to blame childhood experiences and walk away from responsibility. Instead, I had to step up and make things right. Eliza and I have since implemented daily check-ins. Simple yet profound, these moments of connection allow us to ask each other questions like, "How are you feeling today?" and "Is there anything bothering you that we can work on together?" So far, this practice has brought about noticeable improvements in Eliza's spirits, and we've even resumed our beloved date nights. While we still experience the occasional disagreement, I'm genuinely thrilled to see how much our relationship has flourished. As for Ally, the drama hasn't changed much, but the workplace environment has become surprisingly tolerable. I've come to appreciate my lunchtime escape outside the office, especially since the cafeteria food is notoriously unappetizing. In fact, I've realized just how much I dislike the chaotic energy of the cafeteria. It's not the ideal place to unwind. Looking back on everything, I feel like I could write a novel about these experiences. If I ever met Eliza's brother, I doubt we'd get along. You see, I have a tendency to joke around, and I don't do well with people who can't take a joke. There seems to be a clear divide between Ally and Eliza in terms of their senses of humor, which has made things quite awkward. Ally's penchant for making hurtful jokes has started to paint her as a bully, while I found myself caught in the middle, longing to mediate but often feeling pulled apart by their contrasting styles. It was a reflection of my own personal shortcomings, but it seems like most of those issues have been addressed. As for Ally's situation, it remains uncertain. We're not privy to whether she's doing any self-reflection or addressing her issues, but we do know that Eliza and I are genuinely happy. We're tackling our challenges together, attending counseling, and actively checking in with one another. That gives me hope. Switching gears, let's dive into another story that's been circulating. Should I remove my wig to accommodate a coworker's sensory perception issues? This one hits home for me as a middle-aged woman dealing with hair loss due to hypothyroidism. Though it's not classified as medical hair loss, I wear wigs almost all the time, rarely stepping outside without one, and even donning them in the comfort of my home. Jay, a colleague of mine, is on the autism spectrum and grapples with anxiety and multiple sensory perception issues. Our company is committed to supporting employees like him, and I wholeheartedly agree with that philosophy. As a parent of neurodivergent children, I understand the importance of creating a supportive environment. Recently, Jay learned that I wear wigs, and it seems to distract him to the point where he struggles to concentrate in my presence. He even approached me with a request: would I consider taking off my wig so he could see my natural hair? He acknowledged that he wasn't sure if this would resolve his anxiety, but he hoped it might help him refocus. I told him I would think about it, but inside, I felt a strong reluctance to comply. Since our conversation last week, Jay has escalated the matter. I've been informed that, since my wig is worn for cosmetic reasons rather than medical ones, I may be required to remove it to accommodate his needs. While I expressed willingness to take it off for him in private, I'm adamant about not agreeing to never wear a wig around him. Such a stipulation would feel distressing and unfair to me. As these stories unfold, I can't help but wonder, how do we navigate the complex interplay of our personal needs and the needs of others in a workplace? How do we find a balance that respects both our identities and the accommodations necessary for a supportive environment? The situation had been simmering for a day before I finally received a response this morning. In a nutshell, I was told that my concerns were merely a matter of vanity, and I was expected to accommodate Jay's legitimate issues, even if it meant going without my wig at work. This left me feeling uncertain. Should I reach out to Jay directly to discuss this, or should I stick to communicating through my supervisor and HR? What options do I truly have? I've been asked how Jay learned about my wig situation. Honestly, I've been quite open about it. Jay was right there, within earshot, when a colleague and I casually discussed my choice to wear wigs. Let me share a bit more about myself to give context. I'm known for being strong and tough. After all, I'm the only woman in my department, as well as in the adjacent ones. My coworkers probably see me as someone who takes life in stride, someone who wears wigs for fun. But the truth is, my hair loss is a sensitive issue for me. Everyone at work is also aware that my son is autistic, and I care deeply about the challenges that autistic individuals face daily. A few years back, I even helped a former coworker with autism fight for necessary accommodations regarding mask wearing. Given my reputation as a resilient woman who also shows compassion towards the needs of autistic people, I'm sure my coworkers assume I'd instantly agree to whatever makes Jay feel more comfortable in our workplace. Some comments from others added fuel to the fire. One user asked, "Who told you that your hair loss isn't medical? You have hair loss due to a medical condition, hypothyroidism, as you mentioned. Why does your coworker's medical condition take precedence over yours?" Initially, when I approached my insurance company and my doctor's office about getting my wig covered, they told me that my hair loss was merely a side effect of my medical condition, not a medical condition in itself. This week, HR echoed that same sentiment. Company policy clearly states that my hair loss doesn't qualify as a medical condition, meaning that wearing my wig is considered purely cosmetic. Apparently, Jay's sensory perception issues outweigh my so-called vanity. Another user pointed out that HR had effectively said, "Your wig is just your vanity, and you need to get on board with accommodating Jay's genuine issues, even if that means going wigless at work." I found it frustrating that the HR representative I was communicating with, a man who also experiences hair loss and keeps his head shaved, had mentioned his own situation. He expressed understanding of my desire not to be without my wig, but his words did little to change their stance. Then someone else chimed in, saying Jay's issues weren't nearly as serious as mine. "She just wants to wear her wig," they argued. That might be a legal accommodation, but it's not comparable to sensory issues. Glasses are necessary for eyesight just like sensory tools are crucial for focus. Your wig is merely for the appearance of hair that everyone knows you don't have. I understood their points, but I couldn't help but feel that suggesting an autistic person might lose their job because I want to wear my wig was not only absurd but downright cruel. I don't wear my wig just to pretend I have hair. I sometimes wear high heels, but at 5 feet 10 inches, it's not to appear taller. I wear wigs because I despise how I look without them. It breaks my heart and turns my stomach. I can't bear the thought of people seeing me without my wig. When I've been seen without any head covering, I've felt the judgment in their eyes, and that's a significant issue for me. Fast forward to a few hours later, I found myself grappling with the fallout of this situation. Earlier in the week, I had a brief conversation with Emily from HR, who informed me that Jay had brought up his issues with me. She asked a few routine questions, which felt standard enough. But this morning, I had a conversation with Tim from HR, the person who was officially handling the case. I then received a message from Emily, requesting to talk off the record. I found myself wondering about the implications. Was this off the record for her protection, or mine? Should I even accept her call? After taking a moment to consider, I decided to take Emily's call but opted to simply listen. She explained that when I replied to Tim's email, I could CC Alicia, who had been checking her email regularly. I thanked her for the information, and we ended the call. Here's the kicker: Alicia is a black woman who also wears wigs, which is central to this issue. I wondered if she might have a more nuanced perspective. The next day, everything started to change rapidly. After bringing this matter to Alicia's attention, a video chat was arranged that included Tim, the HR person who initially told me I would need to remove my wig, along with a higher-up in HR and someone from legal. Once the right people were informed about what was happening, it was treated with the seriousness it deserved. In the video chat and through a series of texts and calls, Alicia assured me multiple times that I would not be required to remove my wig. It became clear that Jay and I would need to establish boundaries moving forward, as the situation had escalated far beyond just a simple workplace disagreement. As I sat there, relieved yet anxious, I realized this fight wasn't just about hair, it was about respect, understanding, and the right to feel comfortable in my own skin, wig or no wig. As we wrap up this conversation, I have to say it's been a wild ride. Both of us have been instructed that if either of us tries to discuss this matter further, we need to report it. So, it's officially done and dusted. I genuinely appreciate all the thoughtful comments, the advice, and the unwavering support I've received here. Thank you. Now, let's dive into the question that's been on everyone's mind: why did HR even entertain this situation in the first place? Unfortunately, my company has a history, a rather troubling one, of neglecting to provide adequate accommodations for employees with disabilities, especially those whose challenges aren't always visible. In recent years, they've made significant strides to change that narrative. I believe this incident is a prime example of HR scrambling to accommodate someone they know has disabilities, all in a bid to avoid any accusations of failing to provide support once again. But let me be clear, I'm steering clear of this whole situation. Seriously, I wouldn't touch this with a 10-foot pole. I've got no hidden opinions or thoughts to share. I understand where Jay is coming from, And I see the perspective of the original poster, too. But let's not overanalyze this or get lost in a maze of opinions and interpretations. It's just not worth the effort, folks. Instead, let's focus on the bright side. Picture this, a lighthearted ending, where we're all dancing in celebration. Well, I'm not literally dancing at the moment, but I certainly have enough energy to light up a room. So, let's take a deep breath and wrap up this video on a high note. I can't thank you all enough for tuning in. We're inching closer to 10,000 subscribers, can you believe it? Me, in this cozy recording booth, sharing silly stories with all of you watching from your screens, it fills my heart with so much joy. You all mean the world to me. So, what do you think about the story we just unpacked? Feel free to share your thoughts and engage in a civil discussion in the comments below. I genuinely value your input. Thanks again for watching, everyone. Until next time, take care and goodbye.